medication. He's sleeping a lot. He just getting thinner every day, so he's not in good shape. And then Ted Norris, remember him? I hadn't got to go see him, but I stay in touch with Betty, and she said he's getting better because he's getting grumpy again. So that's a positive sign. Yes, ma'am. Mike. Yeah, I hadn't heard that. Mike Craig's brother passed away. I know that they live over in Columbia, right? Or I did not know that. Anyway, Mike Craig, if you didn't hear, Mike Craig's brother passed away. Um, I know. Well, very sorry to hear that. Anybody else? Yes. What's going on with T? I know she wasn't. Oh, I didn't know that. I knew she wasn't here. Yeah. Well, I don't hear the announcements on Sunday. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Remember T? I know she'd been coming more than I've ever known her to come, and then she wasn't here Sunday. But she was with us on the whatever Facebook because she put on there about halfway through the service. The volume is going out, and I can't hear. This is very disappointing. which happens a whole lot on our Facebook thing. We're supposed to be getting that fixed, but it seems to be taking a while. But anyway, um, yeah, I know she was at least watching us. Yes, ma'am. Yes, that's yeah. Miss Betty's having surgery. Um, Gonna have to redo her knee surgery. Uh, yeah, is that that's at Greenview, correct? Yeah. Well, remember Miss Betty. Also, Miss Sharon is going to be induced Friday, so we'll have a maybe another little red-headed child around here. Maybe not, but my guess is it'll have some red hair. But just that's my guess. She thought that was funny. Yes. What's his last name? Disman. Okay. Zach Disman. Anybody else? Yeah, we need. Yeah. South Green is having a grief seminar, so we'll get the information to you. Anybody else? Well, if not, let's give this opportunity if anybody needs to respond to the Lord, either to become a Christian or maybe just ask for the prayers of the church or maybe need to be restored. Um, if anybody needs to respond, please do so as we stand and sing together. A common love for each other, a common gift to the Savior, a common bond, holding us to the Lord, a common strength when we're weary, a common hope for tomorrow, a common joy in the truth. Class is dismissed. Or dismissed the classes, I guess. Hey, buddy. Hi, gorgeous. What happened to you?
I broke my collarbone.
Oh man, when in practice or just
I did it about a week ago. I
didn't know it?
Yeah, I just went to the doctor.
Just knew it was hurt?
Yeah,
How long recovery?
6 weeks.
Oh man. I don't know. I didn't do a head count. I got 35. I think I got 35. Oh, here's the announcement behind you. Terry, did you try to tell me that? Terry, did you try to tell me the announcements were behind me? I didn't look at you. I'm sorry. Oh, yes. Kathy Burchett's mother had open heart surgery yesterday. Have you heard how that went? I don't have her phone number now, so and then William Smith, Angie's stepfather, we passed away. Still hadn't made arrangements.
Yeah, his cousin Bobby that lives in Illinois, actually in Canada, on the husband here, they're waiting for me back.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to Saturday, so it'll at least be Thursday.
Well, listen, if y'all want to get rid of me, it'd be okay if y'all would send me into the remote parts of Canada to go hunting. That's kind of a dream of mine. Do what? You'll go with me? I know about snipe hunting.
Somebody wrote on mine and Donald's.
Yeah, somebody, sorry. Yeah, there's all kinds of writing on here, but that's from me. This is, as you can see, I've owned this book for a while, and it was old when I got it. So, and I've doctored it up quite a bit. This is a real helpful little thing on the number on 666. That's what it is. Anyway, we're in Revelation 13, and when we get to the end of it, then we'll look at this little paper. Tuck it away in your Bible. It's really well written. This is not the same one I showed you last week. This 6:30 thing is pressing me for time. I was in such a hurry to go get Miss Frankie. I went out and left my Bible and my book, but fortunately I had a Bible in my car and an old copy in my office. So anyway, like I say, we'll look at that towards the end. So you've got this scary stuff going on in chapter 13, but remember, this is a vision. This is using symbols, and this is just such a marvelous book. If you'll take the fast approach, kind of like I'm doing, and not get lost in the symbolism and trying to figure everything out to the minute degree. This is a chapter 12. I told you it's a beautiful picture. It tells the story of the birth of Jesus. It tells the story of Satan trying to destroy him. It tells why the church is being persecuted, because Satan couldn't destroy the Christ child. Satan couldn't win his little battle in heaven. So he goes after God's people. So it's a very beautiful little description of why God's people were being persecuted. Well, you just got more to that now. You got, how they're being persecuted in chapter 13, even though you've got this really scary sounding two different beasts that show up. There is something on page 170. I just happened to look at it. 174, 175 on these beasts. And to be honest, I probably just ought to make you a copy of all this. but I guess that's violating copyright laws. Uh, but anyway, let me not get this too distracted. And I saw a beast rising out of the sea with 10 horns. That's a symbol of power, 7 heads. I actually started on this last week. Uh, the 7 hills of Rome, that's what it was noted for, with 10 diadems on its horns and blasphemous names on its head. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard, his feet were like a bear's, and his mouth was like a lion's mouth, and to it the dragon gave its power. Now we know who the dragon is, right? That's Satan. So now he is giving his power to this beast. Now I'm going to go ahead and tell you that this beast is the military and political power of Rome. What he is about to present is Satan's Trinity. Anytime God does something, Satan creates a counterfeit. Okay? And this is Satan's alternative religion, if you will. But he creates his own little trinity. The first part is Satan, the second part is the beast. Now, if you look at, and the problem with the Bible that I have, it's got so many little numbers in it that it's hard for me to keep up with what verse. Let's see, and all of you're just supposed to get that this is a ferocious beast. That's what all these animals are. You can chase down it all you want. That's what it boils down to. But in verse 3, it tells us a little bit about who this beast is in a strange way. Now, to modern ears that don't know the history, this sounds real confusing. To the first century, the end of the first century, Roman citizens, they would not just the Christians, the Roman citizens, they would have known what this is referencing. One of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed, and the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast. Okay, what this is referencing, even though it sounds so strange, we know this, and like I say, I know it's in here somewhere on the page I gave you. Well, it actually at the top of page 174. It deals with this a little bit, but maybe I saw this somewhere else. Anyway, let me get back and just talk. It's at the top of page 175. Look at that. The word used for beast is a wild, savage jungle brute. Such a beast in Jewish apocalyptic work symbolizes a ruler or his government. See, for example, Daniel 7, 2 through 8. The marks which identify this beast are facts known historically about Domitian, the Roman emperor of John's day. He blasphemed God, the name of God, and the sanctuary of God. Domitian appropriated himself the titles of deity. He demanded that he be addressed as supreme Lord and God. Now, that's an arrogant dude, isn't it? He even refused to receive correspondence directed to him unless it used this salutation. From the Christian's viewpoint, such was blasphemy of God and the name of God. And then they didn't really deal with the part that I'm talking about, but save that and let's look at it a little bit again. Here's what, and now this fascinates me. We always study Nero from the Christian perspective, right? So what do we know about Nero? Y'all talk now. Besides, people name their dogs Nero.
He was wildly crazy.
He was wildly crazy, at least from our perspective, he was. Let me give you an example of how crazy he is. He was convinced his mother was trying to take power. He tried 2 times to kill her, and she was a tough old girl. She survived both of them. But he got her the third time. And then he did basically an autopsy of her, in that he laid her out naked and made commentary on, well, this is pretty good for a woman her age. Yeah. If that doesn't get you, I don't know what will. That says all you need to know about him. He had a boyfriend. He decided that he wanted him to be a girlfriend, and he did surgery on him himself, and the surgery was not successful. Now, that's what we know about him. We know that he persecuted Christians with a vengeance, right? We know that he lit his garden parties with Christians and Jews, dipped in oil, set on fire at night so people could have a torch burning. Now, that's what we know about him. But you know what? He was greatly admired by the Roman citizenship. Isn't that bizarre? They thought he was a great and a strong ruler.
Well, he had several social programs and that he did for the people that, of course, the people like. We wouldn't necessarily agree with everything, but he did a lot of building and a lot of showing of the flag, and we're strong, and
we are the Roman Empire, yeah.
Beautification projects and stuff like that.
He was big on, as he said, social programs, on beautification and building. And a government can do that and be rotten morally, can't they? But if people are not concerned about morals, they think, what a great government this is. Look how pretty buildings we got. Of course, the society may be rotten to the core, but look how great we look. That's always worth remembering. Anyway, he was a strong leader. What did the people at this time think about his persecution of the Christians? Way to go, Nero. They are the worst things to ever happen to the world. That's what the Romans would have thought. Remember going back to the very beginning, they thought these people practiced incest. Now, Nero could do that, and that was all right, but they thought these people practiced incest because Brother Randy was married to Sister Leanne, and that does sound bizarre. They believed they were cannibals. They believed because they ate flesh and blood every time they got together. They were atheists because they refused to worship the Roman gods. That sounds like pretty bad people, don't it? And then when I think it's a myth, I don't think that it's here's what is true. Rome burned. A lot of Rome burned. Now the legend has it that Nero fiddled while it burned. That's more legend than it is fact. But what did he do? Yeah. But he also built a bunch of other fancy buildings. He bulldozed the poor folks' house down, so to speak, and made it better. And so the people that had the power was like, yay, what a strong leader he is. Yeah. Yeah, he rebuilt it for himself and his rich friends. Yeah. That gets into a political issue. I don't know if it's just political, and I don't have it figured out. But the eminent domain law is, man. I think about that. I think about, well, I'll tell you. I think about the African American community in Bowling Green, proud of their little houses they had. It wasn't anything fancy, but basically the city says, we need to beautify this area, and they take over and tear it down and all that. If that was my house, you see how I'm gonna look at that differently versus how the city leaders look at it. They're gonna say, "Boy, we made this place a lot better looking." But if it's my house, they took my house from me. It is an insulting thing. Uh, and yet I see the need for some of that too. I hadn't got that figured out, like a lot of things in life I hadn't got figured out. But anyway, so from a Roman perspective, he's a good leader. Well, he dies. And they really believe, and this is based on historical writings, there is the hope that he's going to be resurrected, that he's going to, not resurrected, reincarnated. Because he's just, after all, he's a God. So, that's not a real problem, is it? I mean, he's not a God, but that's what they said. And so when Domitian comes along and he's a strong leader and he also is persecuting the Christians, guess what they're saying? He's back. Good old Nero is back. And so when it talks about that you saw the head that's mortally wounded and then it comes back, that's tying in with what the Romans believed about it. And I'll have to find the book to copy that just to show you I know what I'm talking about. But I do know that this guy mentions it somewhere. But I actually have a book that's got the writings that are involved in this. So the beast was given a mouth uttering haughty and blasphemous words, and it was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. That's 3.5 years, and all that. It opened its mouth to utter blasphemy against God, blaspheming his name and his dwelling, that is, those who dwell in heaven. In other words, he is raging against Christians and Jews, I'll have to say. Also, it was allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them. Now, that's, I just saw, does everybody's version translation have that last verse? Where it says, and I didn't tell you where I started reading again, but it's verse 6. Oh, verse 7 also. Somebody read, I'm reading from the English, the English Standard Version. Don't remember which one I brought. The English Standard Version. Somebody read verse 7. So, Jerry, do you have the NIV? Would you read that for me? Yeah. Just 7. Okay, so it's the same. I got a footnote that's interesting, but I'll look at that on my own. My other Bible doesn't have this footnote, but anyway. So this guy is he's going to make war on the saints. I want to finish this verse out. He is given power over every tribe, people, language, nation, and all who dwell on earth will worship it. Everyone whose name has not been written before the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who was slain. Okay, so he's going to make war on the Christians. Again, we're having a description given as to why Christians are being persecuted. And here's a word. Verse 10, if anyone is to be taken captive, to captivity goes. If anyone to be slain with a sword he must be slain. Here is the call for the endurance and faith of the saints. Okay? Got a pretty bad monster after you, but it gets worse. Because here's what happens. Verse 11. Then I saw another beast rising out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb. You getting that? We got the Lamb of God and we got the Lamb of Satan. Looks like a lamb. What does he sound like? Like a dragon. It's his counterfeit savior. It exercises all the authority of the first beast in its presence and makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast whose mortal wound was healed. It performs, I'm going to stop there. Okay, here's what we know. And somewhere along the way, I feel like I've already told you this, but if I have, I don't remember when, so I'm going to tell you again. What are all the religious leaders, not Jews, not Christians, what do they do with an emperor that calls himself God? They don't have a problem worshiping multiple gods, so they decide to get on board. Hey, he calls himself God. We want to win his favor. We kind of believe he might be a God. So let's create a worship service honoring Caesar. So they create their own liturgy. That's order of worship. We're a liturgical church, even though we don't know it. Did you realize that? A liturgical church is pretty much having a set order of worship. We kind of know what's going to happen when we come in the door, don't we? We don't really have to have a bulletin if you're visiting the church. We're going to sing 2 songs, have prayer, sing a song. We're going to follow anyway. They come up with their own liturgy. They come up with songs of praise for the emperor and the genius of Rome, they call it. They're going to have prayers. They're going to have sacrifices. Now, these are priests from other religions, but they think, man, we can just stay busy all the time and, win the favor of Caesar. And it's, after all, he's a god. It's the right thing to do. All right. So you've got the political authority that's against Christians. Now you've got this other religious group, which, by the way, was a very, 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 very strong group that have jumped on board on worshiping the beast, the first beast, and they start putting pressure on people. Oh, by the way, I know Wilson's the head of the president of the Rotary Club. He retires so he can unretire and get busy again. But anyway, Wilson, how long have you been connected with the Rotary Club? Well, now that's been at least 25 years. Wilson, what did they used to do if you were a member of the Rotary Club and you missed, like, say, 6 weeks in a row? But you had to go to other meetings. But if you didn't make it, what happened? Well, I know a little bit about it. They voted me in one time, and I was like, what's his name? Groucho Marx. I didn't want to join a club that would have me. But anyway, no, I just didn't. I would have been honored to have been part of it, but I was still going to college then and just didn't. When I found out that you had to go, and if you couldn't go to yours, you had to make up for it somewhere else, or they'd kick you out. So they took attendance real seriously. Guess what? The religious authorities say we're going to keep an eye on who worships Caesar. So they actually give out a little token that says, I have worshiped Caesar. Okay, now that's not what it said, but it was a little token. Now that's the mark of the beast.
Like the I voted sticker?
I voted sticker some people are so proud of. Yeah. Okay. Now, there's not much, but there's some records in which your name was written down. Now, remember, they don't have first and last names, but you're Jerry, gray-haired, short. They actually have a written description of the person who had worshiped. That way, if you lost your token, you could say, I went to church I went and worshiped Caesar. There's records of it.
There's a receipt somewhere.
There's a receipt somewhere. Go check down. I went down here to this place and And so you could, now, what if you didn't have the token? You already know this even though you don't know it. Don't know that you know it. You couldn't buy and sell in the marketplace. They used their religious power and they used the government backing to say, okay, if you don't fall in line here, forget getting a job, forget getting to sell anything. You're going to be punished. Now you know that because that's in this book, in the book of Revelation, not in this commentary. That's in your Bible. You've read it, and people make it about today when the Social Security number came out. People that got on board and it's all about us. This is the mark of the beast. You have a Social Security number, they're going to keep up with you. Eventually, they're going to punish you if you don't fall in line. You're not going to be able to get a job. And oh, by the way, you had to have a Social Security number to get a job, so that just proves it. It's the mark of the beast. And people have always jumped on board trying to make it about us. I'm not going to say, I'm not smart enough to say arrogantly that this couldn't happen again, but it's already happened. Okay, this has already been fulfilled. So anyway, verse 16, also it causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark, that is, the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Now, did they really tattoo people? I don't think so, but remember, God has already marked his people too. Remember that? Earlier in this book. Did he literally mark them? No. And I don't think that they literally mark. Of course, you know, conspiracy theories. One of the worst things about modern media is conspiracy theories can spread so fast. There are people honestly convinced that if you get a COVID shot, you're getting a computer chip stuck in under your skin, so they can keep up. It's crazy stuff. But anyway,
They did that years ago anyway.
yeah, you already got it. You've had a long time.
That's what those vaccinations were all about.
Yeah, that little round thing that made all them holes in it, multiple things there. Did somebody have something he was going to say? I thought I heard somebody start to say something. Sean, you always got something to say. Was you going to say something? Yeah, that was it. That was it. They had computer chips before we had computers. It's just, I mean, anyway, I hear some of those, and I'm like, you got to be kidding. Yeah, we are being tracked now. Whether or not they're really paying attention to us, but they are paying attention to some. And to be a little bit honest, I'm glad that they're paying attention to some. I, doesn't surprise me at all. Does not surprise me.
Is the devil.
My mom said the same thing. She's like, you know that big computer, 666, it's called the Beast. You can't get on the computer. I guess that was the name of it, the Beast.
Yeah, probably. Well, they were huge when they first came out. They were gigantic. Boy, Jaquez, I almost called on you because you looked like you had your hand up, but you wouldn't say anything yet. You're sitting by a girl that had never said much of anything to me. But anyway. Anyway, that's what I want you to get this, folks. I am not going to rule out the possibility that there can be another fulfillment of this, but I don't think that it's going to be. I think it's already been fulfilled. And it is a message to persecuted Christians. And I've said this again and again. This is a message that would speak to the Christians in China today, This is a message that would speak to the Christians in northern Nigeria. This is a message that will speak to anybody that is oppressed. In fact, I know I've mentioned this, but I'll mention again. I have a commentary. Well, it's not so much commentary. I have a book that is about reading the book of Revelation through the eyes of African Americans. And they would look at it a little bit different. Because, I mean, it's been a well, it hadn't been that long ago, to be honest. They were an oppressed people, wasn't they? They were, in the South, they didn't want the slaves evangelized. I know you hear about old-timey slave churches, but a lot of, not all, but a lot of slave owners did not want their slaves evangelized. For one thing, a lot of them didn't believe they had souls. They didn't believe they were really human beings. But also, if you baptized a person, he's your brother. Now, how do you treat your brother? See, that changes the dynamics of the relationship, and they'd rather not have to think about that. Now, that's interesting, isn't it? And when I say it hadn't been that long ago, I love sports. I love watching these documentaries on sports, and it just is. I watch them, and I'm like, really, this just happened then? I mean, University of Tennessee put up 3 statues recently of the first black player at the University of Tennessee, the first black quarterback, and the first black quarterback in the SEC to win a national championship. None of those have been that long ago. I mean, it really hadn't been that long ago, and it really, in the terms of time, it hadn't been long ago since Martin Luther King was leading his protest of peace, and they didn't get everything they wanted when he was alive, for sure. Now, they still lived in a great country. Well, by the way, how long has apartheid been canceled out in South Africa? It hasn't been long ago at all, has it? Now, they're not African Americans, they're African Africans, but I mean, they didn't have any rights at all. Yes, sir, Wilson. Yes, they sure did. No. Well, here's an interesting thing in Church of Christ Christian church history. For the most part, it was a rural movement for a long time, and it eventually got into the bigger cities. But it had its most success, and churches used to have blacks and whites, and they were not financially able to build a balcony. But in most city churches, the blacks had to sit in the balcony. So how much actual fellowshipping was done, I don't know. But the blacks had to sit in the balcony, and the white people got to sit down low. But yeah, I've got the congregation that's where my spiritual roots are tied to, had about 220 members, and like 60 of them were black. Now I know where the building is. It's still there. They didn't have a balcony, so they would have had to sit amongst them. Now I also know people that remember trying to get black people to come to church in America, and when they did come, they would make them sit in the classrooms rather than the auditorium. This is in the 50s and 60s. So it hadn't been that long. So when they read about being oppressed, a book about being oppressed, that it's going to change. They can find hope from that perspective in the book of Revelation. 666. Get you a little paper now, and we got a few minutes, although you can read this for yourself. Did you know the Mediterranean? I know some of you did. Did you know the phrase on page 175? Uh, as far as they were concerned, they ruled over the whole known world. Uh, to the Romans, this is the third paragraph down. To the Romans, it's actually circled. To the Romans, the Roman world was the inhabited world. They even named their sea to indicate middle of the earth. Did y'all know that's what the Mediterranean came from? Yeah, you did. You did. That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right, and that hadn't been that long ago. Well, it is amazing. Now, listen, folks, it's amazing, and I'm not saying I'm not some radical nut on trying to fix all the wrongs that have been done in the past. You can't do that. You just got to get better and go forward. Is my opinion on that. But how come we gave all the German citizens a free pass? You know why? They look like us. There were, and they changed dramatically. The German population of America changed dramatically. They had their own newspapers. They conducted church services in German, but to keep from looking like traitors, and from experiencing what the Japanese Americans did, they decided they're going to print their newspapers in English and start conducting their church. Yeah, it was. Now most of that's up north. It wasn't around here, but yeah, all of that was going on. What's that? Oh yeah, yeah. Well, the Amish never did quit that. They wasn't real sure there was a war going on. But anyway, no, actually, a lot of Amish and Mennonites were put in prison in World War II for being pacifist. That's when they kind of came up with the conscientious objector and let them serve as medics. Uh, anyway, no,
Growing up, I great grandparents, they immigrated over here when my grandfather was young. Their last name's Hartman. When they got here, they dropped the two N's. They dropped the second N when he started school. But my great grandparents lived in South Bend, it was all German and Hungarian community. I remember when we were little, every time my great grandmother, she was on the phone talking to neighbors, whatever, it was always in German.
really.
And we had to learn a little bit of it when we were younger, but it was, I mean, like what you see on TV and these little, Italian communities.
Enclaves, yeah.
It was like that there. There was a whole section of South Bend that when you walk down the street, I mean, that's all you heard people talking was German. All food, the churches, all Catholic churches, everything.
Really, still did. And it's to me, history is interesting. I know it bores some people to death, but there's so much interesting stuff to know. Yeah, that's exactly right. I tell you, I've never been an admirer of Jesse Jackson. I just never have been. But when he gave a speech at the Democrat convention, I don't remember which one, and he described his dad coming home from World War II and being in Washington D.C. and having to get up and go to the back of the bus, and German people that from Germany got to sit on the front of the bus. That was one of the most powerful segments of a speech I've ever heard. That boy, I'm like, how do we reason that? I mean, his dad was in World War II. By the way, had to do terrible jobs in World War II because he was black. And one more thing on racism. This is the truth. By the way, white Americans are not the only people racist. There's racism throughout every culture in the world. Always has been. Unfortunately, always will be. We can always do better. But have you ever wondered why we never made Cuba a state? It was a prosperous country. It had rich soil. They made good cigars. It made perfect sense. We helped liberate them. You know why we didn't make a mistake, right? Didn't speak the right language, and there's a large population with African descent. I mean, that's bottom line. And the ones that wasn't from African were Spanish descent. And just think about that. We wouldn't have had to put up with Castro. We wouldn't have had to put up with all that nonsense, but we didn't do it. It was there for us. And they would have gladly joined us at that time. Anyway, back to this. Images, this is now somewhere down here on the middle of the page. Images were set up to make worship of the emperor easier. This is a well-known fact in Roman history in the time of Domitian. When Trajan came to be emperor, he had many of the golden images melted and turned to better purposes. So good for Trajan. People who refused to worship the emperor Domitian were refused the privileges of buying and selling in the marketplaces. That's reflected in verse 17. Those who did worship him received a mark upon their hand or forehead to indicate, I don't think that's literal, according to the custom of some of the pagan cults. Maybe it did, maybe some did. It probably varied from community to community. That the individual was an adherent of the particular deity. The mark of the name of the emperor, John presents in the name of the symbolic number 666. And if you look down at the bottom, it talks about David Smith and Disciples Commentary. It reduces Nero Caesar to the Hebrew consonant equivalent, Neron Caesar, and adds up the numerical equivalent for each letter. In the primitive languages, a letter was often used for a number, as in the Roman system. And we know we used to have, I don't know if kids have to learn this now, used to learn Roman numerals. Like I say, I don't know if they do now or not. And I'm not sure why they would anyway. I'm not sure why I did, other than I try to figure out which Super Bowl it is. I mean, they're the only ones that use Roman numerals that I know of. Yeah, I knew Super Bowl 50, but they could have put the numbers there for that one. But anyway, you do that, and it shows how Nero Caesar, and remember, they think Domitian is him reincarnated. His number is 666. Now, again, I already told you this. Some people have tried to make the Roman Catholic into Martin Luther. All those guys did. Tried to say it was the Catholic Church, the Pope. And he shows how they did that. Later on, people tried to make it into Hitler, and certainly I can understand if there was ever a candidate for it, it would have been Hitler. But I don't think that's who it is. And then he goes on, shows how some people make up their own numerical system and randomly or make up what the English alphabet numerical value, and so they come up with different things. Apparently, they turn the kids loose, so we will be overrun in just a minute. So anyway, that's interesting. And he also deals with how the people of that period and that area viewed the number 6, and even starts talking about the Sibylline oracles on page 177. That's something you don't read every day for sure. But anyway. Yeah, I need to make copies of some more pages for you. Marriage settlements, wills, transfers of property, none of them were legal without the stamp of the emperor. So if they decided you wasn't playing the game with them, they could stop you from all kinds of things. All right. Y'all have a blessed evening.